Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced on Tuesday that Advocate Andy Mothibi, the current head of the Special Investigating Unit, will take on the pivotal role as the new National Director of Public Prosecutions, effective from the 1st of February 2026. Now, since May 2016, Mothibi has directed the SIU, relentlessly pursuing investigations of maladministration and corruption within public institutions. For more, we are joined by Dr. Simon Howell, who's a criminologist and crime policy expert at UCT. Dr. Howell, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Firstly, your reaction when you first heard that this would be the appointment?
I think it's a good appointment. I think it's one that is needed and one that ultimately should produce or bear fruit. But however, I think that the process that has been followed is going to raise questions and raise flags, and ultimately, it creates a storm over a new appointment's head at a point where it's quite a stormy sky in the criminal justice system as a whole.
Yeah, a lot has been said about, that there was this whole hoo-ha about the panel and the public interviews, and then ultimately the president decided to go for a candidate that wasn't a part of that process. For those who say, look, that's not how the procedure should go, what about for the other side of the coin that says, maybe you do get headhunted in jobs?
Well, I mean, the president is within his constitutional mandate, and he did argue that should he have to declare another panel, that may ultimately, lead to some legal issues. So I think on the one hand, his decision was to expedite this and to ensure that someone was in place already so as that prosecutions could be led. But equally, that being said, simply essentially overruling or simply moving beyond a panel when due process has been followed already raises some questions. So, in this context, it's problematic because you don't want the person who's coming into this role to have any doubt about their legitimacy and their ability to lead the organization. And as such, while it's a very good choice, this decision may ultimately undermine at least the initial stages of their work.
The Justice Minister was speaking to my colleague here on Newzroom Afrika following this appointment. And when asked about Advocate Mothibi's age and the fact that he'd only be able to serve 2.5 years before he also had to go on retirement, she seemed very confident that 2.5 years is enough time to stabilize the NPA. Based off what we're seeing from the Nkabinde inquiry and others, do you think 2.5 years will be enough of time for Advocate Mothibi to turn things around there?
One would hope so. One would like that to be sufficient time. In reality, however, I'm not sure if it will be. I don't want to sort of doom the position before it's begun. I mean, let's hope and let's pray that he can indeed turn over that and ensure that everything is done in 2.5 years. But if history is anything to go by, it may not be as easy as that, and it may take a little bit longer. But of course, as you mentioned, then that brings into question a number of leadership issues down the road. But in the interim, I'd rather not doubt before they've taken up the role and hope that they can succeed in the time frame.
The Justice Minister said ideally, of course, you would want somebody who could probably serve 10 years, right? 2 full terms. But Advocate Mothibi is a good person to stabilize things for now, to be there for the interim for those 2.5 years, so that when the person who comes in who's going to be able to withstand the time and possibly serve more than one tenure, that they're inheriting an institution that isn't as unstable as it is right now. Do you understand the thinking behind that? Does that make sense?
Strategically, that would make sense, and one hopes that is what ultimately is carried out. With any leadership change, there is always going to be difference and there is going to be some instability. So one hopes that by the time that change comes around, things have been settled to such an extent that a leadership change does not undermine the processes and organization as a whole. And that's an ideal world, and it would be a useful strategy in that instance. However, that being said, if government is anything to go by, this may not always be the case, and it may not be that simple. So again, one can hope that this occurs and that the strategy works, but reality may taint that slightly a little bit.
Well, time will tell. Dr. Howell, really appreciate your time this evening. That, of course, was Dr. Simon Howell, who's a criminologist and crime policy expert at UCT.